Got it.
Hello, today is May the 4th, 2023. My name is Michael Pierre Price. I'm a technology-based artist out of Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm really pleased to be able to interview and have a chat and conversation with Denver artist Laura Shape. Hi, Laura. How are you doing today?
Hi, Michael. Great. How are you?
Good, good, good. So let's dive into this and find a little bit about your background. Did you have any first inkling that your life was going to be around art? Was this a calling for you, or is this something more recent, or how would you describe that path?
Both. So that's a great question. I don't ever remember not being an artist, but I do remember at age 8 realizing I wanted to be a graphic designer. My sister, my older sister, was going to college for in art school, and back then, you had set type. We didn't have computers yet, so she brought back a Letraset book. Letraset was like the press type rub down, and it
Mhm.
was like a phone book. And I remember going through it and just being like, and I started copying all the fonts, and I just really liked mixing fonts with images. And I was like, how do I do this? And so from then on, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then I only really very recently decided to just be an artist, like tried to be as a career path. So I left graphic design. I had gotten into user interface design and web design. Um, I mean, when you could get into it as a designer, so like in '95, and then I worked in that for 20 something years,
Okay.
and just had worked myself into a position I didn't enjoy anymore, and kind of was done. And then, unfortunately, I had worked my almost my whole career in startups, and through a weird twist of fate, my portfolio was stolen, both my digital one and my print one at the same time, and I never backed anything up. So I had about 16 years worth of work completely gone. The companies didn't exist, my work didn't exist, and I was like, wow, that's a lot of like missed sleep and missed birthdays and you missed holidays and whatever. And there's literally nothing to show for it. There are a few things on the Wayback Machine, but that's literally it. And so it's like, I think I'll work with my hands and make something concrete next. So,
And
um,
how long ago was that you made that transition?
um, so when that happened, it took a while to work myself out of that career.
Okay.
I quit completely when I moved to Denver. I was in LA, so I quit completely when I moved to Denver, which was about 8 years ago.
Okay.
That's when I started pursuing. It took a while to figure out what I wanted to do next. I knew it was something, physical, but art physical, but I didn't really know yet what I wanted to do. So it's only in the last like year that I've really discovered that what I'm enjoying now.
Okay. So if I were to ask you why you're an artist, is it what you kind of mentioned, that there's just something inside of you that gives you satisfaction, or is it something more than that, or how would you
Um, I think
answer the why art?
why art? Yeah, that's a great question too. I mean, like I said, I don't remember ever not being one. So I don't. It's like saying like, why is your hair brown? I mean, it just is.
It's
So
in your DNA
yeah,
then.
I don't. It's literally my DNA. My dad was an engineer and my mom was an artist, and
Oh,
so I got it
and
kind of
good
that
role
way.
models.
We're good role models, and well, my mom never called herself an artist. This was just sort of like a hobby for her, um, but she's very good.
Okay.
And what I definitely got genetically was dabbling in stuff. So, my and working with your hands. So my dad had a wood shop that was right outside of
Okay.
my basement bedroom door, and my mom loved to experiment in different things. So by the time I left for college, I'd already, we had our own dark room, and we had all of the stuff to make stained glass, and my mom had a kiln, and so like I had an airbrush. My All my
That's
siblings are much older, and they all did other stuff. So I got to try everything. So
Oh,
I
that's
dabbled.
interesting.
Yeah,
So that sense of experimentation then, uh,
also genetic.
but don't you think that that's a critical part of being an artist, though?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think people do it in different ways, though. I and my mother did it in ways of like, oh, I there's something new to learn. Like, oh, I could try that medium, or I
Uh-huh.
could try that medium, and they can be completely disparate, right? Some people find one medium and just go deep for the rest of their lives, like that.
Ah,
So I think exploration, yes, but how you apply that exploration is
okay.
can be different. Um, I'm a
So
dabbler. Yeah.
so with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about your work,
Okay.
and Where that sense of experimentation, where that sense of exploration has brought you in the last 8 or so years since art is now your full time
Jam.
passion here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so as I showed you before, the even that has been the last 8 years has been sort of a convoluted path. So I started um, because I left the startup world. I had stuck in my head that I was going to start up my own company. So I
Okay.
wasn't going to be an artist. I was going to start some sort of creative company, um, but not a service. So I thought I was sculpting at the time, and I had taken classes in jewelry making and learned that I really liked lost wax sculpting. So excuse me, I played around with belt buckles. So I was sculpting really ornate belt buckles, and I really enjoyed that. Um, but I was trying to do it as a business, and
Uh-huh.
that really wasn't going to fly. Ornate belt buckles that weren't Western for women in their 40s who don't want to call attention to their waists, and when belt buckles aren't currently on trend was not a good business plan.
Okay.
Um, so, then I had gotten into playing with the leather of the belts, straps themselves, like dyeing them and having them printed and stuff. And I really liked that. So I tried to experiment again by learning how to make handbags. And then COVID hit, and nobody needs a bag to carry their things in when they don't leave their house. So there again, I was just like, oh, well, I guess that's not it. But then by that point, because I was making bags out of leather, I had discovered that I really liked working with leather. So I happened to be at, like a pre-holiday sales event with my bags, and another artist was there who works in leather. Just coincidentally, she's in Boulder. Her name's Alexa Allen, and she had some little leather bowls that she had made there. And those are just, it's not the I think main focus of her work. She does a lot of like sort of very elegantly sparse architectural kind of um, home accessories. Very minimalist, but really
Okay.
sharp. Anyway, I bought a couple of her bowls, and I had been interested in wet molding leather for a while. I had watched a bunch of videos on how to do it, and I had all the supplies, but I just wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with it, or what I would mold them into. So I hadn't taken the leap. So anyway, I had brought a couple of her bowls home and was just looking at them, and all of a sudden I was like, huh, wonder if I could just mold these in a mixing bowl. And so I tried that, and it worked. And then I had been working with exotic leathers for my bags a little bit, and I really liked that. And I wondered if maybe you could fuse, to wet mold leather, you use vegetable tan cow leather, or
Mhm.
vegetable tan any leather, but cow leather is what was readily available. So I played around with fusing some alligator leather to the cow leather and wet molding those together, and that worked too. And then I was off and running. So I just started experimenting with all the different kinds of critter I had and seeing if they worked, and they all worked. And then dyeing them, and it just sort of rapidly evolved because I enjoyed it so much. So I had started with mixing bowls because I had those around for shape, and then I got bored with round, and so I started looking for other like vases and things I could mold into, and came up with some other new shapes, and then um, have recently started, like the piece behind me in this picture is uh, python skin. This was my first convex shape, so rather than concave like in
Okay.
bowls, this was experimenting going the other way. So now I'm playing around with that more, but a lot of rapid expansion, really fast looking into stuff, and also learning how to mold these flowers out of leather. While I had to
So,
fix these. Mhm,
so one of the things that I've come to know about you
mhm,
is that you have now taken on working with invasive species or invasive
mhm,
animals.
mhm.
Do you want to talk about how you got there and why you're doing it, and what does that mean? How does that, in terms of the work you do, is there a message there, or is there a reason for working with those? And feel free to tackle any of those.
In any order I want.
They're kind of
Yeah,
all related, but
sure. Uh, so I think that first of all, in invasive species, the animal species are just briefly, are animals that have been accidentally transplanted from, or purposely transplanted from the areas where they naturally occur and have natural predators or natural enemies to keep them in balance, right? To areas where they don't have any natural
right.
predators, and areas in which they can thrive, and there's nothing to keep them in check, and so they're taking over and destroying their new ecosystems. And so the ones that I'm currently working with are Burmese python from the Florida Everglades, invasive in the Florida
Right.
Everglades, lionfish that are now throughout the Atlantic and Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico and even into the Mediterranean. They're naturally Pacific fish. So somehow, even their, it's the weirdest thing, even the fish that would be their natural predators in the Pacific, evolve separately in the Atlantic from them and don't recognize them as food. So,
Okay.
people have tried to train sharks and things to eat them, and the only thing the sharks learn is that to eat the people, and then they ignore the lionfish. So they're just decimating um, all the native fish and coral reefs. It's a giant mess. And then the third one is a fish called dragonfin that is invasive in the Mississippi, and it was originally brought in to manage ponds, and then in a big flood, they like made it out to Mississippi and have taken over
Right.
and are destroying water quality from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. They say so. Why I like working with them. One second, my screen just did something weird that I need to close it. Why I like working with them is, I think it gives me purpose. Um, sorry, I'm just playing with my screen. There we go. Um, Along with not knowing why I'm an artist, right? Because it just comes so naturally, is not having a purpose as an artist. Like I just make because I make. I can't not make. That would be dying. Like I just don't. It doesn't compute at all. So Um, but with that, like I'm not seeking a deeper purpose. I'm not like it comes out of me and this is what I think is pretty and and then it's
Yeah.
done, right? Like,
Yeah.
it makes me itchy until I finish it and if it's out of balance or anything. So what I like about working with these animals is that all of a sudden there is a purpose beyond just making to make. And that I find very motivating. I think they're beautiful. I really love the little bit of randomness, right? Of working with a natural material, and the challenge that it presents to like take this texture and sometimes pattern if it's a snake and make something new out of it.
Yeah.
Um,
So your
and
your blank canvas really isn't blank.
no,
You're
and actually that's a real help to be
yeah.
honest, right?
Okay.
So I'm never starting with a blank canvas.
Yeah. Yeah,
you know,
I thought about that when we were getting ready to do this interview. Is that facing a blank page or facing a blank
it'd
canvas?
be
It's like
awful.
the nightmare that many artists go through,
That's
and so
right.
you have a different set of challenges that you have to deal with. I find that fascinating.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you nailed it actually. And, part of what I enjoy is the reactiveness of it.
Mm.
Like, I'm confronted with this. Have you ever taken the Clifton Strengths Finder, or now I think it's the Gallup, I think Gallup Occam Strengths Finder test?
I don't
No,
remember now.
no, I'll send you that. Well, the reason I bring it up is because I recently reopened my results from like a decade ago, and I've been feeling recently like I'm operating on all cylinders, like firing on all cylinders. And I was like, what is it? And then I went through the list. So what it does is it tells you the idea behind it is that everyone has strengths, right?
Right.
And there are a finite like 36 strengths that people could have, and your like top five are what make you unique.
Okay.
And you shouldn't have a football player play baseball, right? Like, so the idea behind this, and it's much more centered around the work office place and management and stuff like that, but it's full life applicable. So my top five, I just recently realized, are input, which means I really like information, like I really like
Yeah.
to know. I want to learn and know. Um, um, Adaptability, which I think comes really into play with those, which is you know I'm happiest sort of shooting from the hip, you know, and I will create situations in which I have to shoot from the hip, to be happy, to be really happy. But also, I think another one is strategy um, and ideation. So, I love ideas. I love, um, but strategy. So, shoot from the hip plus strategy, I think in this case, is really what I'm causing myself to do. So, I don't start with a blank canvas. I already give myself something to react to, which means I have to be adaptable. And then I create a strategy for, what kind of piece I want to create out of it. And then without question that fails. And like it surprises me, it behaves in a different way than I expected, or something I did as a mistake. And then I have to react to that and come up with a new strategy for how I'm going to evolve it. So no piece that I have finished ever looks like it did in my mind when I started,
Yeah.
and that's part of the fun, right?
Okay.
So
But I have a question in regards to your aesthetic and the aesthetic that guides you,
sure.
because when I've looked at your pieces, they look like high-end museum artwork to me.
Thank you.
No, no,
That's kind of you to
and
say.
it's nice to pay you a
Likewise.
compliment. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying that because um, I guess, with sculpture, and you can go from sort of a
Mhm,
craft style kind of work that's kind of folksy, or
mhm.
that would be kind of a utilitarian sort of work, and or you can go something very very high end that my Giacometti might make, or something like that.
Sure.
And so I really kind of wanted to find out if you've gone in a certain direction because that's who you are, or because you were looking to create a certain style. I'm just kind of curious about that, because yeah, the work there's an elegance and simplicity, but there's the beauty in that. And that's
Thank
why I
you.
was just really curious about all of that.
Thank you. I'm not going for a certain style is the
Okay.
first answer. When I started, I would say the one thing that I am actively trying to force myself to do is to be less rigid and specific. So when I started, I was the first few bowls that I made, the edges, like I trimmed them, I sanded them, they were perfect. It was as round as it could be. It was like, and it was very constrained. Uh, they look good, but over time, what I'm finding is I like it better if the edges are a little wobbly, if
Okay.
the so and that does not come naturally to me. So
Okay.
because of that, I'm trying to push further.
Okay.
Um, and the other, the graphic designer in me um, needs it to have a very polished finish. So that might be coming through. But I again, like I get itchy if the T's aren't crossed and the I's aren't dotted right. But
Do you think that's an outgrowth because you are working with animal skins or animal leather, that natural roughness, if you will, or the inexactitude of life is part of that process, and you can't kind of force it to be idealized?
I think so, and that's a great way to put it. I think the ones with the refined edges that I did early on, they're cool, but you're right. Like the just kind of the wild erraticness of the natural texture lends itself to sloppy borders, to wobbly edges, and
Yeah.
but there's also a fine balance, right? If you, at least for me, you can't leave it too unfinished, or then it just looks hackneyed.
Okay.
So it's finding that the fun is just exactly that, is finding where you can play with that and where it actually needs to be refined.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I really enjoy that a lot.
So is your process now? You said you learned from watching some videos, it sounded like, or learning from other people. Um, do you feel like you've honed in on your own process at this point that's kind of unique to you?
Oh yeah, I don't think there's anyone doing anything with like the skins beyond just the cow leather. I haven't seen anyone like
Okay.
merging. So pretty much as soon as I put an exotic on, or like merge two different kinds of leathers together and start
Okay.
molding them, that was pretty unique. So the further I get into that, definitely
Okay.
the more I have my
All
own
right.
style.
So you on your Instagram account, I saw that you made some rather interesting videos of your process,
Oh, thanks.
and maybe on your website as well. I don't remember now for sure,
Mhm.
but it was really fascinating to watch. Was that something you were wanting people to sort of look over your shoulder and see how you do things? Was that something you just kind of wanted to let people in on, sort of your technique, or was there a different motivation?
Marketing. Um,
Marketing. That's a good answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's again super uncomfortable. It's really hard to do, like to work for the camera. You
Yeah,
can't move things around, and so it's awkward and uncomfortable. So on the one hand, I'd love to be able to show people how to do it because I think it's an interesting process. On the other, it is a huge pain in the ass to make those videos. Um, so really, I guess part of his marketing and part of it is giving back. One of the things I love Instagram. I love it, and I feel like I have played with it so much that what it curates for me, what it surfaces for me, is like the world's best art museum. I love so. One of the things that has given me is the opportunity to watch other people do stuff, and sometimes I learn from it, and sometimes it's just neat to
sure,
watch how people
sure.
make. So I'm
Okay.
trying to give back to that a little bit, but um, that is not my favorite thing to do by a long shot. Is try to video my work, and then I get obsessed with editing, like I do
Yeah.
all myself, and I'm just like, "Jeez, stop, just make the things." So that's
So
hard.
where you are today,
Mhm.
and what you've been up to, and I know you're looking to expand your audience. But who do you consider your art is for? Uh,
Thanks. Well, so I consider my art is for really in the context of these animals. Like I really consider that my art is for people for whom, I mean, anyone who just likes the aesthetic for sure, but really people for whom these animals are a problem. So like people who live in areas where these animals are affecting um, Florida primarily. Like three of them come. Well, so I also use alligator, which is not invasive, but has a really great environmental story behind its use. So alligator, Burmese python, and the lionfish are all alligator supposed to be there, but the other two are invading Florida. The poor state is getting hammered. Um, so yeah, like I guess what I think of with the invasives, I'm trying to create sort of a beautiful solution
mm,
to a problem that can help people get involved without having to go hunt lionfish themselves,
okay,
or you can donate money to an organization that's solving these. You could buy a piece of my work, which means that I am buying the skins of those things from the people who are hunting the lionfish. So I'm trying to help kind of create, I don't know, almost like I kind of want to use the word trophy, like you are helping this cause and
yeah,
you get something out of it that you can also display and be
exactly.
proud
Okay,
of. So,
okay,
um, yeah, I want the people who buy my work to feel really good about their contribution
okay.
to solving this problem.
So I I find that position and what you're doing to be really, really a wonderful melding and merging of
Thank you.
art and environmental awareness, or
Thank you.
just if nothing else, caring about this planet that we're all part of. So to that end,
Mhm.
with that sort of um, basis for your work and kind of where you're coming from, have you had any like professional experience that really stands out for you that uh, sort of affirms that that whole position that you have, or as an artist, have you has anybody looked at the work and said this is really cool and what you're doing is meaningful, either from other environmentalists or impact in any way? I was just kind of curious whether or not you've had some support from a professional standpoint where people have said, yes, we believe, we believe in what you're doing, and here's why.
Well, see, that's a little. So, I've only just recently, maybe in the last 6 months, started working with these invasive species. So I've only been able to crank out about 5 or 6 pieces so far.
Okay.
Um, uh, so I see what's the best way to answer this. When I had, and I discovered them at different times. So again, alligator is not invasive, but it was how I discovered it. I'm going to give you a long answer to your question.
Okay, no, that's fine.
How I discovered it was working with exotic leathers right around the time I really got involved in using them for bags. Chanel uh, dropped alligator in a very public way. They said we're not going to use this anymore. This isn't bad for the environment, whatever. And I was like, or bad, bad for alligators. We don't want to blah blah blah. And I was just like, is it unethical? What's the story? I'm a meat eater, so that already isn't a problem for me. But I don't want to work with something that I'm just killing for the skin or are being mistreated. I mean, besides the fact that you're killing them, right? Obviously, that's crappy. But beyond that, like what their conditions they live under. And so I started researching it, and immediately, as an answer to Chanel, a large group of international environmental conservation scientists wrote an open letter to the fashion industry saying, "Hey, wait, we didn't realize you didn't know this. We haven't been talking about it because we assumed everyone knew. But there's this long story about how in the late 60s, alligator were almost completely extinct. They were down to a few thousand in the world, American alligator, and crocodile as well. They've been overhunted. They grow in swamps, and people were changing swamps to monetize them, to drill for oil, to turn into farmland, whatever. And so they were almost completely gone. And so in like 1970, they became, I believe, the very first, if not one of the first animals on the endangered species list, which was newly created for them, and went under federal protection. And then the ultimately, um, all these conservation groups got together with luxury houses like Hermes and created a very well regulated trade to make that a luxury product, a luxury material, and used the funds from that to invest back into alligator habitat and maintenance and blah blah. So, um, so anyway, the long story of that is that now alligators are back in the millions. They're nothing. They're totally restored, and because this is an ongoing, funded by the sale of alligator um, restoration and maintenance program, if you all of a sudden remove that profit motive, so people who own swamps, um, if they want to monetize them, swamps are very expensive to maintain. They're wetlands, so they either want to go wet or dry, um, and they're very expensive to maintain. And like I said, you can't really monetize them in any way. So uh, if you remove the profit motive of raising alligator eggs, then the environment will disappear again.
Okay.
And the reason that's important, it's a long story, I know, but the reason that's important is that wetlands, it turns out coastal wetlands are something like at least 30 times, if not more, better at sequestering carbon than even rainforests, right? So they're like the most important land on Earth to protect, and they're dwindling fast. So that's when all of a sudden I was like, wait, what? Like, not only is it, and they're not, and the ones that I use are wild raised, or so the way it works is that like their alligators, the alligator eggs are caught taken from the wild, raised on farms until they're a year old, and then 10% are released back into the wild, whatever, which
Okay.
is far greater number than would survive to that age if they were just in the wild, but that's the age of viability at which they can protect themselves. The rest are raised on farms for the high end, fashion houses. But that has brought the alligator population back and booming. And so that was my first interaction with not only is it okay to do this, like we sort of have to do this, right? Also, the whole animal is used in terms of alligator. It's eaten, the blood is used for science, research, and things like that. So then I was like, well, if I'm okay with killing an animal for meat and then using its skin for leather, can I be okay with killing an animal for its skin, but then using its, the rest of its body anyway? Like, is there really a difference there? But I became really interested in the idea of, are there others? Like, are there animals, like, are there any leathers that I can feel unequivocally good about using,
Okay.
right? That even more than alligator. And so then I started researching, and I found the Burmese python and learned about being an invasive. And I found a woman who moved down there to catch them. She was a realtor in Indiana and just loved snakes, and learned that Burmese python were invasive and they're just killing them and discarding them because they can't be eaten. They're full of mercury. So she wanted to honor the snakes. So she moved down there and started hunting the snakes and skinning them and turning them into leather to at least use some part of them. So I found her and started buying from her. And then I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And then I had worked with, fish leather, 15 years ago or something, a different kind of fish leather as experiment for bags back then. So I just kind of was looking into that again because I didn't feel as bad about killing the fish. And coincidentally, right when I was looking, I ran into a couple of news articles that had been in like Forbes and Fast Company and stuff about a new startup company called Inversa, who was making lionfish leather out of invasive lionfish, and they're billing themselves as the world's first invasive species leather company. So they started with lionfish, they moved into dragonfin, they're now using the Burmese python, and it blew my mind, and I was like, that is the story, like that is what I want.
Okay.
So I reached out to them and they ignored me, and I reached out to them and they ignored me, and I reached out to them again and forced them to like read what I was trying to do, read my statement, and then made them have a Zoom meeting with me, and finally they agreed to work with me. Like they blew me off and blew me off and blew me off, and I was like, no, really, we're trying the same thing. And so anyway, they finally agreed to work with me. So the answer to your question is, when they agreed to work with me, that was kind of a validation of what I was trying to do.
Okay.
And since then, I keep them aware of what I'm working on, and they'll post my work, which is really valuable to me. But
Awesome.
also, the very first show I was in, so I've been in one exhibition without work so far, and the curator for that show was a solo juror, and she was in she is a fellow at the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and like just coincidentally, and she in marine biology, she's like a multi-lettered MD, PhD, whatever, pick your letters, scientist who was just starting to look into invasive species, and she chose my work in this context. And I was like, and I won an award. So
Yay.
yeah, I was won a jurors award. So
Wow.
so that is the very long answer to your question. But yeah, so I've gotten so far, I've gotten a little bit of positive reinforcement. And she like that was the one I really needed. Like I needed someone
Okay.
from the science community who knew what they were talking about to say, yes, what you're doing is the right thing.
Good.
And so now I'm guns ablazing, you know. So I'm going after it, and
Okay.
I dare someone to tell me it's not a good idea.
All right. Well, you and I, along with four other artists, have been in a sort of an intensive number of sessions with Krista Cloutier, founder of The Working Artist. And she put a call out early in the year for artists who are part of the Working Artist group um, to see if they might be interested in this new idea she had called the Working Artist Vision Quest.
Hmm.
And you and I, like I said, with four other artists, have been part of this over the last several months, meeting nearly once a week, not quite, but pretty close. When you heard of this, obviously it interested you, otherwise you would have been part of this group. Did you have any expectations for what this was going to be when you saw Krista put the call out for this?
Well, no, but I, and I didn't want to meet with a group either, to be honest. What I had wanted, so I had just met Krista like a month or two before. I had taken the working art. I think I took, so it's May now. I think I started her online working artist program in maybe like November
Okay.
of last year, and it convinced me that like I think taking that is when I truly decided I'm going to do this as a job. Like it was going through that program that I was like, oh, this is just a resume and portfolio job. I'm great at that. Like that was my whole other career. And for some reason, like it like that switch is all I needed. And then I, had an a Zoom meeting with her one-on-one, where she helped me figure out what my story is, which is, about these invasive species. I was already sort of doing them, but I hadn't kind of nailed it down. And she's like, yeah, what you're doing is what you're doing. Like, here's your story. Here's what you should. And I really struggled with it, because I'm not, I want to help and I want to contribute, but environmentalism isn't. If you had asked me if there was something I was going to get up and march for, it wouldn't be that, right? So it took a little while to embrace that. But in that very short time, in like the month to go through the program, and then the hour and a half to have that call, like it made such an impact for me in terms of helping define what I wanted to do, that I asked her right away, would you be willing to be a coach ongoing? I could use more of this. And she said, no, no, essentially I don't really plan to do that. And I was like, well, would you consider it? And she said, the coincidence is that I think you're the third person this week who's asked me that. And she's like, maybe I should look into this. And so just a couple of weeks later, she came out with the Vision Quest idea. And I was like, yeah, not really. I don't really want to do that. I just want you to be my coach. She's like, well, okay, well, here are the different pricing plans. And I realized I had some debt, and I was like, I'll go with the cheapest one. That's a group plan. But I'm, generally speaking, I'm like a one-on-one person. I'm an introvert. I don't like taking group classes. But I was like, okay, maybe. She's like, I think this could be good for you. And I said, all right, I do it. And as soon as we had that first meeting, I was in. I mean, I loved you all. I thought everyone was wonderful and instantly supportive, and you know, I just clicked. I think we all clicked
Yeah.
immediately, and I have no regrets. And I'm glad this is the way that we have done it, because
Cool.
getting to meet you and getting to meet others has just
All
been
right.
appreciating.
All right. So without getting into too much detail,
Hmm.
what's the last, I guess, what, 2, 3 months now?
Hmm.
3 months maybe. What's the experience, just in a general sense, been like for you?
Um, well, one, it has just been really great to interact with you all on, like you said, an almost weekly basis, get to see everyone's progress. But also, I think the thing that has been maybe the most moving for me is seeing one of the things I like about this group. Everyone's work is so very different.
Yeah.
We're all trying to achieve such very different things, but everyone's work is of such high quality. And I think all of the people are so very genuine,
Mm.
that it's neat to see how we all struggle in similar ways, even though we're trying to achieve different things.
Mm.
And being able to sort of learn from each other's struggle, right? Like
Okay.
you can't objectively see yourself, but I can see things that I have struggled with in, in the other members. I'm like, oh, that's me too, right? So as we all work through it, we're all working through it.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I concur.
yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
in some cases, I'm like, oh, I'm brand new at this career, but I've actually already gotten over that emotional hurdle that someone else is struggling with,
Mm.
or or so and so is already well past this point that I'm currently struggling with, and they're talking about that as a past thing. I'm like, oh, that's a thing I have right now, So
Yeah,
that's really been
yeah.
helpful.
So so is there a sense that you feel like, I guess, do you see a change in yourself as having resulted from being part of this experience, being part of this vision quest?
Yeah, I would say a profound change.
Okay.
Um, and the change that
Without
I
getting
see.
too personal, is
No,
there
no,
anything you
no,
could point
no,
to?
not at all. Yeah, no, I'm like I will sing to this idea to the to the heavens. I think that the change in me has been very much completely getting out of my own way
Okay.
and developing in a very brief time. I would say I want to call it confidence, but it's sort of like it's not even that. Like I feel like I've surpassed needing to be confident to just I'm just doing this thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I've
Yeah.
gone from like, can I do this thing? Should I do this thing? Who am I to do this thing? Like, all of those, can this be done? Are there rules? Like all those sort of things that kind of get stuck in your head to like, what noise? Like I'm
Yeah.
doing this thing,
Right.
get out of my way.
No,
So,
I totally get where you're coming from on that. Yeah, absolutely.
and
It's
I think
awesome.
that's a miraculous change.
That's invaluable,
Yeah,
because
it really
that's where
is.
that's where you really own your own voice and your vision and can do your best work.
Yeah, it's miraculous. And like I said, I'm an introvert. So the, like, I would never have gone up to people before and told them what I was doing. Like I would never be comfortable. Some of the things I see myself in real life, like doing this week, talking to people about my work and reaching out to stores and doing all these things, and never in a million years 3 months ago. And
Okay.
yet now I'm doing it. Yesterday I met with my first store owner about the work that I'm doing, and
Wow.
she, yeah, I don't tell the group this week. I'm very excited about it.
Oh,
Fanciest store in Denver for home accessories, and the owner is, beautiful, foreign, has this great accent, very intimidating, very businesslike, and you know, she wants my work in her store.
wow.
But she was playing a little hardball and
Uh-huh.
asking me to make multiples and would I sell, on commission and things like that. And I was like, no, no, I'm not interested in those things. Here, I'll meet you halfway. I'll do a trunk show if you want to test out your market, but otherwise, like, you can buy my work or not.
Right.
And I couldn't. I would never have done that before, but now I'm like, I have a great product. It has a great story, and this isn't even the market I expect to sell it in. So, if it doesn't work out for you, that's fine. But like, I'll take it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I was just like, who am I? And she said yes to all of my terms. So I was like, yeah, that's
That
what I
is
thought you
so
said.
cool. That's awesome, Laura. That's
I
really
know.
so
Thank
cool.
you. Thanks. It's been a
Yeah.
good week. So yeah, and I owe it all to this group and
That's
this.
that's that's really remarkable. That's really, really profoundly remarkable. That's really neat. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big feeling.
So now where you're at, we still have a couple sessions left to go
Uh-huh.
in our vision quest here, but looking at where you're at and kind of what you've experienced, if Krista offers another group down the road sometime, what advice would you give to somebody who might consider that and might be on the fence about it, or wonders whether this would be valuable or not?
I would say do it. And that's not just like marketing speech. I think that like I said, I wasn't going to. I didn't that's it's not what I have seen, not in just me, but in others in this group. Like sometimes I write Krista at the end of a session. I'm like, oh my God, did you see how much greater like so and so is like than they were 2 weeks ago? So you can see everyone's progress, and it's the neat thing as like of a brief 2-hour snapshot every week to
Hmm.
see sort of the presence, how someone's presence changes
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah.
And all of us have gotten much bigger, I think, than when
Yes.
we started.
Yes.
So because I'm seeing that in everyone else as well, I have to assume that's going to be the case across the board, right? That's
Okay.
5 or 6 people.
Yeah.
So I figure give it a shot. Like I went in with no intention. I honestly went in and just telling Krista like this much time with you so far has yielded so much benefit
Yeah.
to me that I'm just in it for the ride. Let's see what happens. Like I'm not trying to get anything specific out of it, but what I've gotten out of it has been mammoth.
That's awesome to hear. And
Hmm.
I
Do you
totally
agree?
get that because my feeling is very similar to yours that way.
Yeah, it's amazing. Good
That
group.
is, yeah, yeah. No, that's wonderful. So we're really at a point where we should probably wrap up.
Sure.
So if people are interested to further know about you, take a look at your work. If they go online, where can they find you?
Sure. You can go to my website, which is www.laurashape.com, Laurashape, all one word. And my Instagram is Laura J Shape, all one word, LauraJShape.
Cool.
Those are the best.
That's awesome. And if anybody wants to see my work, you can go to michaelpierreprice.com, all one word, or NPP underscore digital underscore art on Instagram.
And it's awesome.
This has
You should
been
check it
really
out.
fun, Laura. I really have enjoyed doing the interview and just having a really nice chat with you.
Likewise, Michael. Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
really
you're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Yeah. So until next time, I'm gonna say we're gonna sign off here.
All right. See